The planter crashed to the floor, splitting apart with a sharp crack that seemed far too loud for something so ordinary. Dark soils spread across the spotless white tile, and among the shards of broken ceramic, something glinted, a small USB drive, half buried in the dirt. My fingers shook as I reached for it, heart hammering in my chest. Why in the world would Madison, my only daughter, hide a USB drive inside a potted plant? I heard her voice in my head as clear as if she were standing next to me. "Mom, water the plants, but don't move anything. Especially the big planter in the kitchen." She'd said it in that clipped tone she'd been using with me lately, a voice that carried more warning than warmth. I hadn't planned to move it, I just thought the plant would grow better near the sunlight. I never expected to stumble onto something she clearly didn't want me to see. For 70 years, life had taught me that people only hide things with such care when they're desperate for them not to be found. And when your own daughter warns you away from something, it isn't just a plant. It's a secret. I clutched the drive like it might burn me and walked downstairs to Helen Miller's apartment. My neighbor was kind, always willing to help, and more importantly, she owned a computer. My hands knocked against her door before I could talk myself out of it. "Helen, could you help me with something?" I asked when she opened the door. My voice wavered as I held out the USB. "I need to see what's on this." She frowned, confused, but nodded. Within minutes, the drive was plugged in, the computer screen flickering alive with folders, files, names that meant nothing to me. "What are we looking for?" she asked gently. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I know it matters." The first folder we opened sent ice through my veins. Pictures of my home, the house I'd owned for 3 decades, where I raised Madison, where every memory of her childhood lived. These weren't family photos. They looked professional, staged, the kind you'd see in a realtor's brochure. My throat went dry. Another folder. Legal documents. At first glance they looked like mine, until I saw the name. Not Evelyn Carter. Madison Carter. My house, in her name. I leaned closer, my vision swimming. "How? When?" Helen didn't answer. She just clicked again, and the next document nearly stopped my heart. A sales contract. My house had already been listed for sale 6 months ago, without me knowing. But the worst blow came when Helen opened a file marked Chats. Messages between Madison and someone named David Torres. I read each word as though they were poison etched into my skin. "Everything's ready," Madison wrote. "The papers have been in my name for months. The old woman doesn't suspect a thing. Once I sell the house, I'll put her in a nursing home and disappear. I'm tired of pretending I care." The words "old woman" hit me harder than any insult I'd ever heard. That's all I was to her. Not Mom. Not Evelyn. Not the woman who carried her through fevers and school exams, who worked herself raw so she could have a better life. Just the old woman. Helen closed the laptop, her face pale. "Evelyn. I don't think you should keep reading." But I couldn't stop. I needed to see it, needed to know how deep her betrayal went. I forced the laptop open again and clicked through more files. Sales agreements, payment plans, chats outlining how I'd be tricked into signing over the deed. Step by step, my daughter had mapped out how to erase me from my own life. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the guest bed in her apartment, the USB clutched against my chest, staring at the ceiling. My body trembled, not from age but from the fire crawling up my spine. The phone rang the next morning. Madison's voice, sweet, casual, as if she hadn't plotted my destruction. "Hi, Mom. How's everything? The plant's okay." I forced my voice calm. "Everything's fine, honey. Perfect. I'll be back in 3 days. Love you, Mom." She said it so easily. Love you. Words that now felt like knives. I stared at my reflection afterward in the bathroom mirror. Wrinkled, tired eyes, gray hair pulled back. But for the first time in years, I didn't just see a worn-out old woman. I saw someone who still had fight left in her. I remembered carrying Madison through the night when she had bronchitis at age 2, working 18-hour days to pay for medicine. Selling my mother's gold earrings so she could have the sweet 16 she dreamed of. Sewing until my fingers bled just to keep her in private school. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, I had done it for her. And now she called me a burden. Later that evening, I opened another folder labeled Complete Plan. The title of the document inside chilled me to the bone, Operation Freedom. Steps to get rid of Mom for good. Step 1. Convince Mom to sign ownership transfer papers under the guise of tax protection. Step 2. Wait 6 months, then sell to investors in cash. Step 3. Keep Mom distracted with a fake work trip. Step 4. Move her into the cheapest nursing home possible, tell her it's temporary. Step 5. Change phone number, move cities, start over. My breath caught. My daughter, my Madison, had written this like it was a business project. Cold. Calculated. Efficient. In another folder, I found group chats with her friends. She mocked me openly, she talks like she's from the sticks. She dresses like she walked out of the 1950s. Honestly, I just tell people my parents are dead. It's easier. I sat frozen, my chest burning. She had erased me from her life long before she planned to erase me from my home. And yet, beneath the pain, something stronger stirred. Anger. Resolve. Madison thought she was smarter than her old lady mother. She thought she could sell my home, shove me in some state-run facility, and vanish into her shiny new life. But she had forgotten something important. I am Evelyn Carter. I have fought harder battles than she could ever imagine. I raised her out of nothing, built a life from ashes, survived decades of struggle. And I will not go quietly. Not now. Not ever. I realized then that to Madison, I had been nothing more than an obstacle in her path to success. While scrolling through her social media, I stumbled across carefully staged posts where she declared herself an independent woman, proudly writing things like, "I learned to be strong because no one ever protected me. I made myself who I am today. Thank you, life, for teaching me that the only person I can count on is myself." Thousands of strangers showered her with praise, calling her brave and self-sufficient. But those words burned me, because behind every false sentence lived my truth. I remembered the countless nights I stayed awake by her bedside, praying her fever would break. The Sundays I sat hunched at the sewing machine so she could have new dresses instead of hand-me-downs. The years I lived on beans and cornbread just so she could eat better than I did. And then I found the conversation that shattered my soul. Someone had asked her if she ever felt guilty about abandoning me. Madison's reply sliced through me like a knife, guilty. Why should I? She chose to be a mother. I didn't choose to be born. Raising me was her responsibility. My only responsibility is to live my own life. I don't owe her anything more than a polite thank you, and I've already given her that for years by pretending to care. Pretending. Every hug, every smile, every affectionate "I love you, Mom," it had all been an act. A cheap theater she had performed to keep me calm while she set her plan into motion. I had believed I was still loved, when in reality, I had been deceived by my own daughter's performance. The final blow came when I found a message she sent to David Torres, the realtor. Just 3 days before her so-called work trip, she wrote, "Everything's ready. The buyers will inspect the house tomorrow while my mom is at my apartment. If everything checks out, we sign Friday. By Monday, the money will be in my account. Next weekend, she'll be in the nursing home, and I'll finally be free. Free forever." Those words tolled in my ears like funeral bells. My daughter wasn't simply planning my eviction, she was celebrating it. She considered my exile her graduation day, her liberation. I shut the laptop and sat motionless in Helen Miller's living room, my whole being collapsing under the weight of the discovery. It wasn't only the house I had lost. Not just my savings. I had lost something far more irreplaceable, the illusion that I had a daughter who loved me. For 70 years, I had believed a mother's love was the most enduring force in the world. That it could weather anything. But that night, staring at those damning words, I learned that love can be one-sided, that it can be mocked, twisted, and weaponized against the very person who gave it freely. Still, as I walked back to Madison's sleek apartment with the USB drive tucked in my pocket like a cursed jewel, something shifted inside me. The grief hardened into something sharper, colder. Not the weakness of an abandoned mother, but the resolve of a woman who had survived 7 decades in a world that had never been kind. Madison had underestimated me. She thought age made me soft, harmless, dependent. She had forgotten that women of my generation learned to endure pain, poverty, and betrayal without flinching. She had mistaken my love for weakness. That would be her undoing. The next few days were the loneliest of my life, but also the clearest. I lived in her apartment like a ghost, surrounded by her expensive furniture, her carefully curated photographs, her trophies of success. In every picture, she looked radiant, smiling at friends, co-workers, boyfriends whose names I had never even heard. I was in none of them. It was as though she had erased me from her life long before she plotted to lock me away. Not a single family photo. Not a crayon drawing from her childhood. Not even the quilt I made her for her first apartment. I searched through drawers and closets for any trace that I had once mattered, but there was nothing. Madison Carter had built a new identity where I simply didn't exist. I remembered small moments I had brushed aside, the way she had met me in the lobby once when I brought her dinner at the office, embarrassed to let her coworkers see me. How she had sighed at Christmas, barely greeting my neighbors before rushing out with a flimsy excuse. She had explained later, "We just don't have anything in common, Mom." Those neighbors, who had stood by me for decades, meant nothing to her. To Madison, they were beneath her, just like I was. On the second day, I began to comb through everything systematically. In her drawers, I found receipts for shoes and handbags that cost more than I had earned in months. Bank statements showed savings that could have covered my knee surgery 100 times over without touching her lifestyle. She could have given me comfort in my old age, but she chose not to. The worst was her private messages. To her friends, she mocked me as someone who faked medical emergencies to guilt her into helping. She described me as toxic and a victim. She claimed that cutting ties with me gave her freedom. She told a man named Ricardo, "My mother thinks that just because she gave birth to me, I should support her for life. She doesn't get that I have my own future. Honestly, she's just a burden society forces me to tolerate." A burden. That was what I was to her. On the third day, I started saving everything. Every conversation, every receipt, every damning word. My hands trembled at first, but necessity steadied me. I needed proof, and I gathered it methodically, piece by piece. Madison had built her empire on deception, and I was collecting the bricks that would bring it down. By the fourth day, when she called to check in, my voice was calm, almost detached. "Hi, Mom, how are things?" "Everything okay?" she asked, sweet as honey. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I answered smoothly. "When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow night." "It's been such a productive trip." "Yes, productive. Productive enough to sell her mother's house." "I miss you, Mom," she said. "You miss me too, right?" "Of course, honey," I lied. "I miss you very much." But the truth was, I didn't miss her anymore. The daughter I loved was gone, buried years ago under her ambition. What remained was a stranger who wore her face. That night, I couldn't sleep. I planned instead. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't let her lock me away like unwanted furniture. I had raised Madison Carter, but I was also Evelyn Carter, and Evelyn Carter wasn't finished yet. At dawn, I went to the county records office. I needed to see the truth on paper. After waiting on a hard plastic chair, a clerk finally brought me the documents. "Mrs. Carter," she said gently, "your house isn't in your name anymore. It was transferred 8 months ago to Madison Carter. Did you sign this transfer?" I nodded faintly. She told me it was for tax purposes. The clerk shook her head. "No, ma'am. This is a complete transfer. You're no longer the legal owner." I left with copies of every page. Proof that I had been tricked. Proof of fraud. My next stop was a lawyer's office. His name was Teodoro Ted Perez, a man with sharp eyes but a kind voice. After I showed him the evidence, his face hardened. "Mrs. Carter, this is document fraud, criminal fraud. With this proof, we can get your house back. We can freeze her accounts. We can press charges if you want." For the first time in days, I felt something warm flicker inside me. Not revenge, justice. When I returned to Madison's apartment, my folder was heavy with evidence. I waited on her designer couch, surrounded by all the proof of her betrayal. At 7 o'clock, I heard her key in the lock. "Hi, Mom," she called, all cheerful pretense. "Did you behave while I was gone?" "I behaved very well," I said. "And I learned some new things." "Oh? Like what?" she asked, kissing my cheek with her usual counterfeit affection. "I learned about computers. About legal documents. Even about USB drives." I held her gaze. For a split second, her mask slipped. A flicker of fear crossed her face before she recovered with a smile. "That's wonderful, Mom. It's never too late to learn." "Yes," I said evenly. "It isn't." She walked toward the kitchen, but her shoulders were stiff. She sensed the shift. She knew something had changed, but not how much. "Madison," I called softly. "We need to talk." She froze in the doorway. Her hands twitched as she forced a smile. "Of course, Mom." "About what?" "About trust," I said, standing slowly. "And what happens when you break it?" Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. She was calculating, already planning her next lie. But this time, I wasn't the blind, forgiving mother she expected. This time, I was ready. Evelyn Carter had grown used to watching her daughter closely, not with suspicion at first, but with the kind of quiet attentiveness only a mother could muster. That Friday evening, Madison smiled at her across the kitchen table, but Evelyn saw through it instantly. The smile didn't touch her eyes. Her hands trembled when she thought her mother wasn't looking. She checked her phone every few minutes, lips pressed tight, biting down on that nervous habit she'd had since childhood whenever guilt clawed at her. "You know what, Mom?" Madison said suddenly, her voice unnaturally cheerful. "I think it's time we talked about your future, about some important decisions we should make together." Evelyn nodded slowly. She had been waiting for this exact moment, the conversation her daughter had clearly rehearsed for months. The explanation that her mother should move into a nursing home, temporarily, while they sorted out legal paperwork. "That sounds good, sweetheart," Evelyn replied evenly, lowering herself into the chair. "I also have a few things I've been meaning to share with you. Things I learned these past few days. About documents. About property transfers. About how plans don't always work out the way people expect." Madison stiffened like a cornered animal. For a moment her mask slipped, but she caught it quickly, switching to a tone she must have practiced in front of the mirror. Mom, I've noticed you've been confused lately, she said in mock sympathy. It's normal at your age. You say things sometimes that don't make much sense. I think your memory is slipping. So this was her angle: portray Evelyn as senile, unreliable, a woman whose words no longer carried weight. It was convenient. It would make her sound delusional to anyone who might question Madison's actions. Maybe you're right, Evelyn murmured, feigning uncertainty. At 70, it's easy to get confused. For instance, yesterday I stumbled across some papers in my house that I don't remember signing. Papers from the county clerk's office that say my property is now in your name. But I suppose it's just my elderly imagination, isn't it? Madison froze. For the first time in years Evelyn saw her true face, cold, calculating, stripped of all the affection she once believed in. Mom, Madison said bluntly, yes, the house is in my name. I did it for you. To protect you. To protect your assets from any problems down the road. You just don't understand how complicated this all is. Protect me, Evelyn repeated softly, tasting the lie. In fact, Madison pressed on, I've already found a buyer. An investor is offering a good price. With the money, we can make sure you're comfortable, taken care of, in a really nice assisted living community. Nurses 24 hours a day, 3 meals, activities. You'll be safer there than rattling around in that drafty old house. Evelyn kept her expression vague, like a woman half convinced. And you, honey? Where will you live? I've accepted a job out of state, Madison replied smoothly. It's a huge opportunity. But don't worry, I'll visit whenever I can. Whenever she could, Evelyn knew that meant never. Well then, Evelyn said with a sigh, if you think it's best for me, I trust your judgment. You've always been smarter than me with these things. The relief on Madison's face was instant. She believed her mother had accepted her fate. Evelyn had given her exactly what she wanted, false victory. That night Madison went to bed confident she had erased her mother's future. Evelyn, lying awake in the guest room, went over her own plan. Tomorrow was Saturday. Madison thought she would spend the weekend packing up her mother's belongings. Instead, she would wake up to a surprise she could never calculate, a mother who had decided to fight back. The morning sky was gray, heavy with promise. Madison slept in, relaxed, certain she had everything under control. She served Evelyn breakfast with artificial warmth. Good morning, Mom. Did you sleep well? Today we'll start organizing your things for Monday. Good morning, darling, Evelyn said calmly. Before we pack, I need to run a few errands. I'd like to close out my bank account and take care of some paperwork. Could you come with me? I don't understand all the modern procedures. Madison hesitated, then nodded. She needed to maintain her role of dutiful daughter until the very end. An hour later, they walked into the city. Madison scrolled on her phone the whole way, probably texting David Torres, the realtor, finalizing the details of the sale. Evelyn walked quietly, memorizing the streets she thought she would never see again. Their first stop was the bank. Madison thought it was to close an account. Instead, they stepped into the office of Teodoro Perez, Mr. Perez to the community, a seasoned lawyer who rose to greet Evelyn with a warm handshake. Mrs. Carter, he said. I'm glad you came. Everything is ready. Madison's face drained. Who is this man, Mom? My attorney, Evelyn said coolly. He's been helping me with some legal matters concerning my house. Madison's eyes widened. Your attorney? Why would you need an attorney? To get my house back, Evelyn answered, staring straight at her daughter. To prove you tricked me into signing documents I didn't understand. To prove you were planning to sell it and place me in a home against my will. To remind you that even daughters face consequences. Perez opened his briefcase and slid a stack of documents across the desk. Miss Carter, he said in an official tone, "We have sufficient evidence that you fraudulently transferred this property from your mother to yourself. Under state law, this constitutes aggravated fraud, a crime punishable by prison. And that's only the beginning." "This is insane," Madison stammered. "She's confused. She's old. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I was only protecting her." Perez gave a cold smile. "Protecting her? Is that what you call this?" He spread photographs across the desk, printouts from the USB drive Evelyn had discovered in Madison's apartment. In her own words, Madison had written, "Everything's ready. The old lady has no clue. As soon as I sell the house, I'm putting her in a nursing home and I'm gone. I'm sick of pretending I love her." The color drained from Madison's face. Where did you get this?" "From the USB you hid in the planter," Evelyn replied evenly. "The planter you told me never to touch. I dropped it by accident while dusting." "Some accident?" Madison looked panicked, realizing her entire plan had unraveled in a single careless moment. Perez continued, "These messages are undeniable proof of your intent. They also reveal your plan to abandon your mother, which adds further charges. And we've already frozen your bank accounts. Any funds from the pending sale will be seized and returned to Mrs. Carter." Madison collapsed in her chair. "You can't do this. I'm her daughter. I was just trying to do what's best for her." "What's best for her," Perez repeated, "was to strip her of her home and abandon her while you disappeared to another state. Spare me. Your accomplice, Mr. Torres, is also under investigation for knowingly assisting in this fraud. He is already cooperating with authorities." Madison tried one last time, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mom, please. We can fix this. Forget the lawyers. Forget the courts. I'll give you the house back. We can just move on." Evelyn leaned forward, her voice calm but cutting. "Forget? The way you plan to forget me on Monday?" Perez snapped his briefcase shut. "Mrs. Carter, the fraudulent transfer has been legally voided. The house is once again in your name. Your daughter's accounts are frozen, and a restraining order will be issued immediately. Justice has spoken." They left the bank in silence. Madison walked like a ghost, her perfect plan shattered. Evelyn felt no triumph, only relief. She had defended herself. The days that followed were like watching a tower of lies collapse piece by piece. Madison came pounding on her mother's door, crying, begging for forgiveness. Evelyn was gone, visiting her sister in another city at her lawyer's advice. The neighbor, Helen Miller, later told Evelyn how pitiful Madison had looked, crying in the street. For a moment, Evelyn's heart ached. But then she remembered those messages, "I'm tired of pretending I love her." The ache hardened into resolve. Within a week, Madison's accounts at other banks were frozen. Her realtor accomplice confessed in exchange for leniency, handing over paperwork that detailed the fraud in full. The legal noose tightened. On Thursday, Madison showed up outside Evelyn's gate, gaunt and desperate. She begged for another chance. Evelyn stood firm. "You had 35 years of chances. This isn't punishment. It's consequence." Madison screamed that she was her only family. Evelyn answered quietly, "No. My daughter died years ago. You're a stranger who shares her name." 6 months later, Evelyn's life was her own again. The courts handed Madison 2 years of probation and heavy fines. She wouldn't go to prison, but her reputation and finances were ruined. Evelyn didn't care about that. She cared about her peace. Her house was hers again. Her garden bloomed with new flowers she tended every morning, each plant thriving honestly under her care, unlike her daughter. Helen became her closest friend, sharing coffee and laughter every afternoon. And Mr. Perez, no longer just her lawyer, visited often. Not romance, but companionship. Respect. A friend to walk with, talk with, share silence with. One spring day, Madison came back with a new lawyer, insisting the case had irregularities. Evelyn didn't even open the door. The process ended months ago, she said firmly. Consequences have been applied. There is nothing left to discuss. That night, Evelyn sat alone in her kitchen, the same kitchen Madison had tried to erase from her life. She felt no sadness. Only strength. For 70 years she had defined herself through others' love. Now she understood the only love that could not be stolen or betrayed was her own self-respect. Her daughter had tried to teach her she was weak. Instead, Evelyn had learned she was stronger than anyone imagined. And that discovery was worth more than forgiveness could ever buy.